We're about to dive into one of the most harrowing survival stories you'll ever hear. It's a story about the love of adventure, a single, fatal mistake, and an ordeal so unimaginable it's honestly hard to wrap your head around. This is the tragic story of John Edward Jones and the Nutty Putty Cave.
Okay, to really understand what happened here, you first need to picture the space we're talking about. Imagine a gap in the rock that's just 18 inches high and 10 inches wide. As you can see, that's literally the size of the opening on a standard washing machine. Just think about trying to squeeze through that.
Now take that mental image and flip it completely upside down. Imagine sliding into that tiny opening, head first, and then getting stuck. Completely and utterly trapped, upside down in the absolute pitch-black darkness for 27 hours. That was the horrifying reality for John Jones.
But before we get into the grim physics of the trap, it's so important to know who we're talking about. This wasn't just a news story. It was a person, a man with a beautiful life and a future full of promise. John Edward Jones was just 26 years old. He was a medical student, a husband to his wife Emily, and a dad to their little 1-year-old daughter. And here's the part that just guts you. Emily was pregnant with their second child, waiting for him to come home from this trip. John wasn't some rookie either. He'd grown up exploring caves. This was supposed to be just one last fun adventure with his brother before he dove back into his studies and his growing family.
This whole nightmare, it all came down to one singular moment. A simple, understandable mistake made in the disorienting, pitch-black maze of the Nutty Putty Cave.
So John and his brother were looking for a well-known passage called the Birth Canal. Yeah, it was tight, but it was a known route. But in the darkness, John went ahead and took a wrong turn. He slipped into this unmapped passage. And unlike the Birth Canal, this wasn't a path. It was a dead end that dropped down at a steep, nearly vertical angle.
So how did he actually get stuck? Well, thinking he saw a bigger opening ahead, he did what experienced cavers do. He breathed out, making his chest smaller so he could slide through the tightest spot. But there was no bigger opening. And when he naturally, instinctively took a breath in, his chest expanded and the rock locked him in. Just like that, his own body, his own breath had sprung the trap. He was pinned.
And this is where the story shifts from a simple human error to just a brutal and complex physics problem. The obvious question is, why couldn't they just pull him out?
A massive rescue operation spun up almost immediately. We're talking 137 different people working to save him, an absolute army of rescuers. So with all that manpower, what made this situation so uniquely impossible? Why couldn't they just pull him free?
Well, it all came down to this terrifying thing rescuers called the fishhook effect. Because of the sharp downward angle he was in, every time they pulled on his legs, his own ribcage would catch on a ledge of rock above him. It's like his body became a one-way valve. The harder they pulled, the more deeply and painfully he became wedged. It was a perfect, horrifying trap. And if that wasn't bad enough, look at the environment they were dealing with. Being upside down for hours was putting unbelievable strain on his heart and lungs. The walls were covered in this slick, wet clay, so rescuers had zero traction. And all of this was happening in a hot, humid 80-degree space that was so narrow, only one single person can get to him at a time. But here's the thing. Even with all of that stacked against them, for a little while, during this 27-hour ordeal, it actually looked like they might pull it off. There was this moment of real, tangible hope. Just look at this timeline to see how grueling this was. It took a full 9 hours for the first pro rescuer to even get to him. By hour 19, almost a whole day after he got stuck, they finally had this complex rope and pulley system rigged up. This was their best and probably their only real shot.
And through so much of this, John was awake, he was talking. When that first rescuer, a woman named Susie Motola, finally reached him, he greeted her with this heartbreaking line. "Hi, Susie, thanks for coming, but I really, really want to get out." It just shows you, he was calm, but he knew exactly how dire his situation was.
And then, the plan actually started to work. The pulleys went tight, the rope strained, and for the first time in nearly 20 hours, John moved. They lifted him up, several inches, enough that they could give him some water and actually see his face. He was exhausted, but he was moving. For a moment, everyone held their breath. Freedom felt possible.
And then, a single sharp sound just echoed through the narrow passage.
That sound, that was it. That was the catastrophic end of the rescue effort. And it marked the beginning of the cave's final somber chapter. One of the main anchor points for the pulley system, which had been drilled into the soft, unstable cave wall, had just shattered under the strain. And in that one instant, the combined effort of 137 people was defeated by a piece of rock.
When the anchor broke, John slid all the way back down, wedging him even deeper and more violently than before. His condition went downhill fast. After 27 hours of his body enduring that inverted position, his heart just couldn't take it anymore, and the authorities had to make an awful decision. Trying to recover his body would be so dangerous, it would almost certainly kill another rescuer. So, with the heartbroken agreement of his family, the entrance to the Nutty Putty Cave was permanently sealed with concrete. John's body is still in there, to this day. The site of one last family adventure became his tomb.
John's story is just this profound, chilling reminder of how unforgiving the natural world can be. And it leaves us with a really heavy question. What does a tragedy like this, one that is literally sealed in stone, teach us about that razor-thin line that separates a thrilling adventure from a permanent, irreversible consequence?